It's been a phenomenal experience. We're also thinking about what's going to happen in that building, the programming, what we can do, not just for the city of Chicago, but for the country and the world, perhaps. My husband, as usual, has great plans for what he wants his presidential center to be, so that takes a lot of work and a lot of time. So, you know, we're getting things done. We like our new neighborhood. We like our neighbors, all that good stuff, so we're good.
You're living in Calorama, which means beautiful view in Greek. It's a neighborhood of Washington, D.C. that some of us who are from the city and
our view is Rock Creek Park.
Yeah, which is
so we're pretty
great.
lucky.
Everybody here wants to know what's it like working with an architect.
Do you want to know what it's like? Well, you know, I don't get to work with them often, but our architects are, it is so much fun, the creative process, the way architects think about space and time. They think about things that we wouldn't have any clue about thinking of. Also, we are thinking about the exterior of the building, the outside, what it means to relate to the broader community. How do you create a building that actually fits into the community and thinks about the community and doesn't overtake the neighborhood? So the architects that we're working with have been phenomenal. They listen. They're paying attention to, they're researching, they're doing their homework, they're getting to understand the south side of Chicago, because that is our hometown, and having a building that is acceptable and adds value to the neighborhood where we have grown up, where we've raised our kids, where my mother still lives, where, you know, so much of my life has been in Chicago. This project means the world to me, and knowing that we have architects who appreciate the whole project and not just what the building looks like, you know, which is important, but it's a building that's sitting in a neighborhood. So we have been blessed to have architects who are thinking about the big picture of what buildings mean in the lifeblood of a community. So I hope you all are doing that too when you work. I'm assuming you all are doing that
We're going to say yes. And we're not going to ask about the fees or anything like that. So.
Yeah, well, I don't look at the bills.
Yeah.
So.
You know, you talk about transitioning to private life, but you are and will always be a public figure. Will you talk a little about what you see for yourself ahead and how you'll use the enormous influence you have and the admiration that people have for you?
Thank you. Well, we're still working on that. I mean, you know, Barack and I have been public servants all of our lives. After practicing law at Sidley and Austin, that was my first job out of law school. You know, I worked there 2 years, and I knew that just working in the private sector, just doing law in and of itself wasn't enough for me. You know, I would remember looking out on the 47th floor of the First National Bank building at the time, which was where our offices were. Beautiful view of the lake, but also a southern view of my neighborhood, which was South Shore. And I felt so far away from the community that had raised me and allowed me to sit in that office. And I thought, well, before I settle into a career in the private sector, I need to figure out is this it? Is there a way that I can shape a career around giving back in public service? So I left and went to the city, and on and on and on. That's a long way to say that public service will always be in our blood, and it takes a second to figure out what this new platform looks like, what it feels like, how will people receive us in these new roles. So I'm approaching life after the White House in the same way that I approached coming into it. I took a good year just to understand what this role means to other people and what spaces are out there, because one of the things that I never want to do is to be redundant in the work that I do and not add value, or to supplant any good work that's already there. So it's going to take a moment for me to understand this new terrain. But one issue that I am excited about continuing to work on is the work that I've done to help young girls get an education around the world. Let Girls Learn, that initiative. There's still so much work to do as I've traveled the globe. You know, whether I've been in Liberia in schoolrooms with dirt floors and corrugated ceilings, or whether I've been in Madrid, Spain, where the education rates and percentages are much higher among women, much like they are in the U.S. The degrees of challenges that women face around the world are minor. Whether it's health, access to quality health, whether it's economic inequality, whether it's unfortunately violence against women that happens too often around the world, the plight of women and girls is real. The struggles are real. And education, to my mind, is at the key of giving women the voice, the structure, the strategy, the tools to improve their conditions. Because if you change the life of the woman, you change the life of a family, of a community, of a nation. It is an obvious investment to me in what kind of ways that people are doing.
Our profession faces its own challenges. We just gave the gold medal, which is our highest honor, to the first African-American architect to receive.
And congratulations. Karen's speech was beautiful. I was mesmerized backstage listening to her speech.
I thought so too. We have work to do. Our ranks do not resemble the American population. The percentage of people who are architects and African-American is, I'm even ashamed to say the figure. But it's hard. We have been trying, and we have been working at it. It's not easy. Can you give us any advice or insight about things we can do better or appeals we can make?
Well, I think with any profession, because it's not just true in the field of architecture, but if you look at law, if you look at science, you look at STEM, you look at so many professions, the struggle is still real, because you have to start, you can't start recruiting from a pool that doesn't exist. So you have to build that pool. And when do you start building that pool? You start building it at a very young age, really young. And this is a big room of people. As Karen said, there are a lot of people. If everyone found a child to mentor, at a young age, you got them early and gave them a sense of possibility and opened their eyes to what they can be. So many kids don't even know what an architect is. They don't think about how buildings are built. They don't know anything about economic development or planning. I know I certainly didn't. And I was an educated kid, right? I went to a good public school. I went to an Ivy League university and law school, and I came out at the end of all that, and I didn't know the options for me because I didn't live in a community where there were architects and lawyers and doctors. And so you imagine kids who were growing up in communities where people don't even have the opportunity to work, period. Now, how do they begin to envision what life can be? You can't be an architect if you don't know that architects exist. And that's where all of you come in. Finding a way to go into schools in your neighborhoods, in your communities, where underrepresented minorities exist, and go in there and start talking. Start small, make a friend, teach a kid to read, take them out to dinner, to lunch. Small ways. You don't have to be first lady to have influence. You don't have to be the president of the United States to have influence. Everyone in this room has the potential to influence the life of another, to affect their character, their behavior, their development. And it's often that personal sort of sphere of influence, that kind of neighbor to neighbor, friend to friend, supervisor to team member, parent to child. That influence is far more powerful and far more lasting than anything I could do as First Lady with kids who see me from afar. So never underestimate your power to change a kid's life just by being present. And there are enough people in this room to change these numbers so that in the next 10, 20 years, we're at this conference and we're not having these conversations. But you have to start young. You have to start young.
Something else that everyone in this room knows is that President Obama, at one point in his life, thought he wanted to be an architect.
Is that a thing among architects? Are you guys actually
Isn't
talking
that a thing?
about?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I only hear from this section. I don't think it's a thing that people over there. Is it a thing?
Yes.
Well, the first question I was going to ask is, well, what would that have been like? But I don't want you to speculate. What I would like to know, though, is what you think drew him to that, and what about our profession might have appealed to him. What appeals to you about it? You've talked a little about the library, but I think people would like to hear that.
Well, I think Barack secretly, deep down inside, he's an artist. He has a very clear aesthetic to him. He tries to downplay it. He's the kind of guy that says, I don't care about what the living room looks like. And then he's got like 12,000 questions about it. What about these pillows? And what about the color? He's got comments and opinions about everything, people. So not to speak for him, but I think that he is an artist. He has artistic abilities. He is he is a mathematician, he is a visionary, he is somebody with ideas, he's somebody that thinks big. That's what you guys do, right? So I think all of those things, and it's sort of the aesthetic piece of the profession that spoke to a part of him that, he doesn't get to exercise in the political arena.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
So it's a secret side of him. That is now no longer a secret.
During your years in the White House and 8 years as First Lady, you've traveled many, many places in the world, met many, many people. Can you draw out for us what lessons you've taken away from that? I think about the city you grew up in Chicago, where you live now, Washington, D.C. You've been there for 9 years. Our American cities face enormous challenges, just like the cities we've been hearing about this morning, many of them in the developing world. What things have you taken away from the people you've met, the places you've been, that you think would help in America and with our cities? It's a broad question.
No, it is. That's a lot of questions, Tom.
Pick the one you want to ask.
Okay. Well, here's the thing that we have to remember, and we can't pretend, we can't keep pretending. People know when no one cares. Now, it's not like folks who live in poverty, who live in crumbling communities, feel good about it. They know they're being left behind. And the kids in those communities, they know that they're not being invested in. And it hurts. And it's a stagnating kind of feeling, whether you are in Soweto or on the south side of Chicago. Kids know when people care about them. I can't tell you how many times I've been in schools on the south side of Chicago or in Anacostia, and kids have said, why doesn't anybody care? When are people going to come and help me? And sadly, I've had to say, you can't wait for people to decide that they care about you. You have to care about yourself. Sadly, I can't tell you that people are coming to help. And in my view, that is the tale of cities. When you think of the concept of cities, cities are a complex, big, messy enterprise. And they're expensive, To have a city with millions of people and dense populations with great architecture and, economic development and commercial development, when you think about what it takes to run a city, the infrastructure, potholes repaired, traffic, safety, you name it. I worked in the city of Chicago for a good chunk of my career. It is expensive. It takes an investment. But when you think about cities like Chicago or Washington, you think of two cities. In Chicago, you think of the Loop, you think of the downtown area, you think of the Sears Tower, you think of Millennium Park, you think of one magnificent mile of the lakefront. That's one Chicago. When you think of DC, you think of the Monument, you think of the Capitol, the White House, the Smithsonian. That's one DC. But then there is Inglewood in Chicago. There are neighborhoods where I grew up. South Shore, Chatham, Augill, Austin. In DC, it's Anacostia. It's like different planets. Because when you don't invest in cities and you think you can get cities on the cheap, no taxes, I want nice trees, but don't raise my property taxes, I want great schools, I want safe streets. When you don't have enough money to make these big concepts work, then the limited resources get focused on that one city, that inner city. But a city is made up of concentric circles, of neighborhoods and communities, and when you run out of resources, well, who's the last to get the resources? The kids outside the circle. Their schools are crumbling. They have no places to shop, no trees, no parks, no programs, no dance, no Little League. I mean, think about all the things you want for your children, all the things that you know are plus tutoring, after school programs, music, dance. You know, in too many cities around the world, kids don't even have that. They don't get a chance. No one is trying to make that right for them. And then we're surprised when things are chaotic. You know, when kids are bored and they don't have anyone investing in them, and then they have access to guns. And then we're like, well, what's the problem? What's going on in Chicago? Well, what's going on in Chicago is what's going on in a lot of second parts of the city. Concept around the world, around the country, around the world, is that when you don't invest in kids, they know it. And they're mad. So what do? They take it out on each other. So if we're gonna have cities, then we have to invest. Which means we have to pay taxes, and we have to, know that it requires money that goes outside of the centric circle and goes into other neighborhoods. Because let me tell you, you know when your neighborhood is beautiful and when it's not. You know, I lived in the South Side in a Chicago bungalow-style house. And we were proud of our neighborhood. You know, and there are folks in Chicago who are proud of their neighborhoods, the historic nature of those bungalows. People who go to work every day and they tend to their lawns, they mow their lawns, they plant their gardens, they paint their window sills. They make sure that garbage is picked up. There are millions of people living in cities proudly like that, and they're proud because of the structure, because of what you do. So I would urge you all to think about that as you look at the next project that you take. I mean, yes, there are the plum projects that happen downtown, that important building, that important park, but there's also those community centers, those park district facilities, the homes, the opportunities that you have to make a neighborhood beautiful for a family or a child that feels like no one cares. And then this beautiful thing pops up in their neighborhood. Maybe it's a place to play, maybe it's a place to learn how to be an architect. Maybe it's one of those places and they feel like somebody cares.
Let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked about some of the challenges our profession faces in terms of ethnic diversity. We also have a gender diversity problem. And you're a woman who was the breadwinner.
Yes.
We talk about work-life balance. What has that been for you? How is that part of your view of things?
It is a constant evolving process. And this is what I say to working women. It's like, it's not easy, and it's never going to be. I mean, what's important to you when your child is 1 month old is different when they're 2, and then when they start school, nursery school, 3, 4, and then when they're teenagers, what I'm dealing with now, are on their way to college. I mean, it's always different. So there is no one right way to do it. And the one thing I can say to working mothers out there is just don't beat up on yourselves. What you are doing is hard. And we still don't live in a society that supports that, even though more women are in the workforce and they're earning more money, and they're, you know, the whole tradition of mom stays home, that sort of June Cleaver kind of image, that doesn't exist anymore. But workplaces haven't kept up. You know, decent work-family balance policies, paternity leave, you know, those are things that we still struggle to implement on a national, federal level. You know, so it's up to the employers to lead the way on those issues. What helped me, Tom, was that when I worked at the University of Chicago Hospitals as a vice president of community relations, I had Sasha, my youngest. I had her 4 months, and I was done. I was so tired of trying to do the balance. I had decided to myself, I'm done. I told Barack, I'm just going to stay home. I will figure this out. Then a friend called me and said, oh, there's a new president at the University of Chicago Hospitals, and he's really interested in talking to you. He wants to do things in the community. He's heard all about you. And I was like, girl, I'm done. But I decided, okay, I'm going to go in and talk to this guy, and I'm just going to say to his face, thank you, but no. Or better yet, I'm going to go in and ask for a lot of crazy stuff, and he'll say no. So I go in with Sasha, because I'm like, I don't have a babysitter, so see how you can handle this, mister. So I come in with my stroller, I give Sasha to the secretary, they're all cooling over her, and she's in and out, we're talking, and he's like, what will it take? And I said, you're going to have to pay me a lot of money, first of all. I said, because one of the things we do as working women, the first thing we do is try that part-time thing, and that's crazy, right? Because all you get is a part-time salary, and you still are working full-time, you still need childcare, all you're doing is getting rich. Oh, I did that once, I did the part-time thing, right? And I was like, we're more broke than we were before. So I said, I need flexibility. That's what I need. I need a good salary because I'm going to do a good job. I'm smart. I'm good at what I do. I know what I can deliver. So don't pay me less. Pay me what I'm worth, and then give me the flexibility to do the job in the way that I need to do it. So I said, that means that if I need to go to pick up to get my kids, don't look at me funny. Don't make me feel guilty for going to pick up, because I'm going to go get my kids and drop them off at the babysitter, and then I'm coming back to work. What men are going to do that? Huh? So I kind of had my little crazy asks, and then he was like, okay. He said okay to everything, and then I was like, ooh, oh my goodness. What am I going to do now? So I had to take the job, right? And I'd already sort of shown him how crazy I was, so he didn't have to sort of learn that. But that's what you need. You need more employees. First of all, you need more women who are going to push if they have the leverage. Because first of all, not everyone has the leverage. So if you have leverage to push, then you have to push for the women who don't, right? Because people who are teachers and bus drivers and who are working jobs where they're paid and negotiate flexibility, they're counting on women like us who are sitting at vice president tables in boardrooms to do that pushing that they can't do. So we have to start asking for what we need. And then we need